The ASFA says you need 1,000 for a comfortable retirement. That number is everywhere. In newspaper articles, on financial planning websites, in conversations with your super fund. And if you have it, you probably feel like you have made it. But here is what that number does not measure: whether you are actually ready to retire. A significant number of Australians who retire go back to work within 2 years. Not because they ran out of money, because they had no idea who they were going to be once work stopped. I have watched this happen more than once. A person hits their number, hands in their notice, and then somewhere around month 3 starts to quietly panic. Not about money, about Monday morning. This video walks you through 8 signs that you are truly ready to retire, not just financially, but in every area of your life that determines whether retirement actually feels good. We will start with the financial test, because that is where most people begin. But pay attention to sign 2, because that is the one most financial planners never bring up. If you're in that 55 to 65 window and trying to figure out whether the time is right, hit subscribe, because every week I cover exactly these kinds of questions. Let us start with the number most people are already thinking about. ASFA, the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, sets the comfortable retirement standard at 1,000 for a single homeowner. That figure covers annual spending of about $840 a year. And if you are a homeowner heading toward retirement with a super balance in that range, you are in reasonable shape. But here is what most people do not read in the small print. That standard assumes you are already receiving a part-age pension. You cannot access the age pension until you turn 67. So if you retire at 60, which is when you can first access your super, you are facing 7 years with no pension income at all. To draw $840 a year from 1,000 super balance, you would need a withdrawal rate of 8.7% a year. At that rate, your balance could be effectively gone by 67, just as the pension becomes available. The average Australian retires at 63.8. That is still 3 years before the pension kicks in, and still a withdrawal rate that puts pressure on your balance. This is not about scaring you. If you own your home and have a decent super balance, you are in a strong position. But the numbers only work if you understand this gap before you walk out the door. Ask yourself, if you retired today, could your super sustain your lifestyle until 67 without running dry? If the answer is uncertain, that is your sign to keep planning, not to delay retirement, but to structure the drawdown properly. But even if you pass the financial test, there is a bigger test most people fail, and it has nothing to do with money. This is the sign most financial planners never put on their checklist. Do you know who you will be when you are not working? That might sound like a soft question. It is not. A significant number of Australian retirees go back to work within 2 years. Not because they ran out of money, but because they lost their sense of purpose. Work gives most of us a structure, a social world, and a sense of usefulness that we underestimate until it is gone. I have watched this happen up close. I used to think retirement was all about the numbers. Then, I watched my own father struggle after he retired. He had plenty of super, no mortgage, no financial pressure. Within about a year, he was back doing part-time work because he simply did not know what to do with himself. The money was not the problem. The identity gap was. If you want to avoid that, the time to build your post-work life is before you leave, not after. Here is a simple framework to start that process in the 90 days before you retire. In the first 30 days, try 3 things you have always meant to do. Volunteer some, take on a hobby, start a small project. In the next 30 days, pick one and commit to it for at least 10 hours a week. In the final 30 days, decide either deepen that activity or shift to something else. The goal is simple. Have a second act ready before you hand in your notice, not a vague plan, an actual commitment you have already started. And the question to ask yourself right now: if tomorrow were your first day of retirement, what would you do at 9 in the morning? If the honest answer is that you are not sure, that is your work to do before you leave. The next sign is one your body might already be telling you. Imagine you are 62, burnt out, with a bad knee and blood pressure that your GP keeps mentioning. Your super is sitting at $500,000. Do you keep working until 67, or do you retire now? Most financial calculators would say keep working. But that calculation leaves out something important: the quality of the years you are trading. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, the average healthy life expectancy at 65 is around 73 for men and 75 for women. That means most Australians can expect about 8 to 10 years of genuinely active, healthy retirement. Not 20, not 25, 8 to 10. If you spend 2 or 3 of those years still working because the financial number is not quite there, you are not saving retirement, you are shrinking it. There are two paths here. The person who ignores the health signal keeps working, gets slower, and retires at 67 with money but not much energy. The person who reads it earlier starts planning a transition, maybe a shift to part-time work, maybe a transition to retirement pension to supplement income while they wind down gradually. The transition to retirement strategy allows you to access some of your super as a pension income stream before you fully stop working. It can ease the financial gap and give you the flexibility to reduce hours without a sudden drop in income. Health is a non-financial factor, but it has a very real financial cost if you ignore it. There is another non-financial factor that catches people off guard, and it is much closer to home. Retirement means spending roughly 40 extra hours a week with your partner. That sounds simple, but for many couples, it is a genuine adjustment that nobody warned them about. You have spent 30 or 40 years with a clear structure: work, home, weekends. Suddenly, that structure is gone for both of you, and the question of whose rhythm the household runs on becomes surprisingly loaded. I have seen marriages that had been perfectly comfortable for decades start to crack in the first year of retirement, not because of money, but because one partner expected a shared holiday and the other expected the house to run the way it always had. If the thought of 40 extra hours together feels slightly uncomfortable, you are not alone. That is a normal reaction. And it does not mean there is anything wrong with your relationship. It means you have not yet talked through what retirement actually looks like, day to day. One simple thing you can do before you retire: agree on a weekly rhythm. 2 days where you do things together, 2 days where you each do your own thing, 3 days flexible. It sounds almost too basic, but having that conversation before you retire is far easier than having it 6 months in when frustration has already built up. Now, let us talk about the sign that most financial planners overlook completely, the one that determines whether retirement actually feels satisfying. I had a client, a 64-year-old engineer, who had $800,000 in super, no debt, healthy, relationship in good shape. By every financial measure, he was ready. He retired, and within 6 months, he was bored and low. Not clinically unwell, just flat. He had no idea what to do with his days. He went back to work as a consultant within a year, not because he needed the money, but because he needed somewhere to be. The money was never the issue. The plan for his time was. Here is how to avoid that. Before you retire, write down 3 things you have genuinely always wanted to learn, or do not things you think you should want, things you actually want. Then pick one and commit to it for 90 days. Treat it like a job. Show up. Put in the hours. Take it seriously. Then find a group or a person who is already doing it. The mechanism is straightforward. Structure replaces purpose. When work goes, you lose both the income and the scaffolding that organized your days. The purpose plan rebuilds that scaffolding before the old one comes down. If you want more practical retirement planning like this, hit subscribe. I put out a new video every week covering exactly these kinds of decisions. But there is another factor that determines how far your money goes, and it comes down to where you live. Whether you own your home or rent, it matters more in retirement than it did at any other stage of your life. If you own your home outright, your annual living costs in retirement are roughly $20,000 to $30,000 lower than someone renting the same type of property. That is not a minor difference. That is the difference between a comfortable retirement and a modest one on exactly the same super balance. The ASFA Comfortable Retirement Standard is built specifically for homeowners. If you are renting in retirement, that $630,000 benchmark no longer applies to you. You would need substantially more or a significantly lower lifestyle to make the same balance last. There are two broad paths. One is to stay renting, in which case your costs rise with each lease renewal, and you have no property equity to fall back on if costs spike. The other is to make a housing decision before you retire, pay off the mortgage, downsize to free up equity, or move to a lower cost area where rent or ownership is more manageable. Neither path is automatically wrong, but you need to make the choice deliberately, not by default, because the housing decision quietly determines how much of your super actually reaches you as spending money. Housing is one big fixed cost. There is another cost that creeps up quietly, and most people budget for it at today's prices without realizing what it will cost in 10 years. Over the past 20 years, healthcare costs in Australia have risen at roughly 3 times the rate of general inflation. That means a $5,000 out-of-pocket medical bill today could be closer to $10,000 in 10 years from the same type of treatment. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, Australians aged 65 and over currently pay around $4,000 a year in out-of-pocket health costs on average. That is before any major surgery, specialist treatment, or aged care costs. Most retirement income plans budget for groceries, utilities, and leisure. Very few budget adequately for healthcare, partly because it feels unpredictable, and partly because when you are 58 and healthy, $4,000 a year in medical costs feels abstract. It stops feeling abstract when your council rates notice arrives in the same week as a gap payment from your specialist. If you have not built a healthcare buffer into your retirement spending estimate, your comfortable retirement income could be cut by 10% or more in practice. That is not a rounding error. That is the difference between one overseas trip a year and none. The fix is not complicated. Add a line item for health costs in your retirement budget and treat it as a fixed expense, not a contingency. Right. We have covered 7 signs. Let us bring it all together. So here are the 8 signs you are truly ready to retire. 1. You have run the financial stress test and you understand the gap between now and age pension at 67. 2. You have a plan for your identity. You know who you are going to be when work stops. 3. You have honestly assessed your health and you are not trading your best years for a slightly bigger balance. 4. You and your partner have talked about what retirement actually looks like day to day. 5. You have a written purpose plan, not just intentions. 6. Your housing situation is decided, not drifting. 7. You have built a healthcare buffer into your budget. 8. You can look at all 7 of these areas and say most of them are genuinely in order. Here is a simple self-assessment. Rate yourself from 1 to 10 on each of those 7 areas. Be honest, not generous. If your average comes in below 7, there is work to do. But the good news is you can start on any of them today. The people who retire well are not the ones with the biggest super balance. They are the ones who went into retirement knowing what they were walking toward, not just what they were walking away from. If this has been useful, hit subscribe and turn on notification. Every week, I cover the practical decisions that determine whether retirement actually works for you.